Hey Sugar Geeks, Liz here. Today I'm going to show you how to make your very own chewy homemade rosemary focaccia bread. Alright, so we're going to get our bread started by adding our sugar to our water and our yeast, and then set that aside for about 5 minutes or until the yeast is foamy. So focaccia is basically a bread that tastes delicious because of the yeast and the olive oil. So there's a lot of steps to this recipe that involve waiting, and that waiting equals flavor. So we're letting this yeast develop, and then we're going to mix it into the dough, and then that's going to sit and that's going to create flavor. So even though this is an easy recipe, the steps are lengthy. It's worth it though. This is basically ready. Little bubbles going on. All right, now we're going to add our water and yeast mixture to the bowl of our stand mixer, or you could do this by hand if you feel like working on your biceps. Now we're going to start developing our very soft dough. Just going to add a little bit of flour. All right, once that's mixed together, we're going to add in the rest of our water, our olive oil, flavor, good amount of salt, and some more of our flour. Continue mixing on low. And now we're just going to keep adding in our flour until we have developed a dough. Okay, so now I'm just going to continue mixing until we have the bounce test, where you touch it and it bounces back and you know the gluten has developed. So the great thing about bread is, depending on the humidity in the room, the flour that you're using, you can adjust things. So if you feel like this is just too sticky and wet, you can add just a little bit more flour until it's the consistency that you're looking for. So I do feel like this is just a tiny bit too sticky, so I'm going to add maybe just like an ounce of flour in here. I am using bread flour because I like that extra chewiness, but you can use all-purpose if that's all you have. Okay, I feel like that's pretty close. I'm just going to take it out of the mixer and just finish the last little bit by hand. I've just got a little bit of flour on the surface of my table here, and it is very sticky, as you can see. So I'm just kind of working that last little bit of flour in there. So you push forward and then fold over, push forward, fold over. So as you can see, I'm pressing the top and it's bouncing back, and that's the bread's signal that says, yes, I have developed enough gluten and I'm ready to go. So I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil in a bowl, flavor, and then we're going to put our lovely focaccia dough in that olive oil, and we're going to let this rise for 2 to 3 hours because we want that yeast to really eat up all of that sugar and flour and produce lots of flavor. We're looking for this to about double in size, so just put it in a nice warm area. By the magic of television, our dough is now ready. I can actually smell the yeast. It smells really good. So this dough, just to like prepare you mentally, is super stretchy. It's like goopy and soupy, and you're gonna be like, oh, what happened? Nothing. That's the way it's supposed to be. So good job. So we're gonna put a bunch of olive oil in the bottom of this pan, 2 to 3 tablespoons. You just want to be more generous than you think you should be. As my chef says, it should be swimming in olive oil. You want a just nice coating of olive oil all over the bottom of the pan. So a little bit of olive oil on your hands. We're gonna lift the dough out of the bowl, and we're gonna try and pre-stretch it into a rectangular shape. Just keep in mind that bread has gluten in it, and that gluten, as soon as it starts moving around, starts contracting and getting tight. So if you feel like your focaccia is just not stretching and it's shrinking, just stop touching it for 5 or 10 minutes, walk away, do something else, and the gluten will relax, and then you can start stretching it again. That's beautiful. Ooh. Into your bath you go. So I'm just going to start spreading this out. And you can see it's kind of shrinking back. So the more you try and force it, the less it's going to want to push out. So just push it out as much as you can and then come back. Okay, so I'm gonna stop, set that aside for 15 minutes. Every time you let your dough sit for 15 minutes, the gluten relaxes. So you're able to pull it and it won't shrink back. It can be much more aggressive than you think, as long as you're not tearing it. So once it's to the edges, we can now cover this with plastic wrap and put it into the fridge for 12 hours, but really you might as well just put it in there overnight. And the yeast is not going to really rise at all during this time, so don't be stressed out about it over rising. It is going to develop all of that great flavor though. Okay, so our focaccia has been rising for 24 hours. We've got these lovely bubbles, looks beautiful, and now all that's left to do is to dimple. So there's not a wrong way to do this, other than just you want a little bit of vegetable oil on your fingers, and we're just creating these little dimples into the bread. And these little dimples is where the olive oil and salt are going to settle into. All right, so right before we bake, we're gonna add some olive oil on top. Let that settle all into those little dimples. And then we're gonna sprinkle with some chopped rosemary, or you can literally use whatever toppings you like. My friend Erin uses everything bagel seasoning. She said it is amazing. You could use Parmesan cheese, tomatoes. Oh my gosh, the rosemary smells so good. But this is my favorite, the flaky salt. This is Jacobson's sea salt, which is my favorite type of flaky salt. It has a delicious, delicious flavor. Into the oven at 450 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes until it's lightly browned. Just like waiting for the seconds to count down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh my gosh, it looks so good. Okay, I'm putting more olive oil on this now. So now is the time to eat this focaccia because it's warm and fresh out of the oven. This can stay at room temperature for 2 days, like it would last that long, but in theory. Or you could freeze it for like 3 months and then just reheat it in the oven for like 5 minutes to kind of bring the life back to it, but otherwise, dig in.